Good evening. They say true alchemists do not change lead into gold. They change the world into words. It's a pleasure to be moderating the session with the best writers of our generation today. My name is Rashmi Mandloi, and I lead this organization called Beyond Diversity. We're passionate about accepting and celebrating differences, and a major body of work has been in the space of women, mentoring them, coaching them, guiding them, and empowering them. It's a pleasure to be a part of this WIT special. And without further ado, let me invite all the three panelists in today's show. My first panelist is Abhijit Bhaduri, talent management practitioner, author, and blogger, who's written 4 successful books, 2 fiction, 2 non-fiction, and at the same time is the most sought after HR leader and futurist. His blogs contain factual read with tips in his unique style of doodling. I've been a personal fan of Abhijit on his insights and deep knowledge about topics, books, and people. Welcome, Abhijit. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. My next guest is Kiran Manral. She's an award-winning and best-selling Indian author, TEDx speaker, columnist, mentor, and feminist. She's written books and books and books, 13 books in last 9 years, across genres in both fiction and non-fiction. She has published short stories in various magazines and also in acclaimed anthologies like the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. An ex-journalist, she's also been a columnist on sexuality at DNA, on gender issues with Tehelka, on parenting in yoto.com, and feminism at shethepeople.tv. Welcome, Kiran. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks so much, Rashmi, for that very generous introduction. Good to see you, Abhijit.
Hey, good to see you.
It's not generous. You all are such people of wow that it's the best platform to have you all together. And I am having goosebumps speaking to all of you. Okay, without further ado, my final panelist also joining us is an ex-journalist with 25 years of writing experience, both in Middle East as well as in India. She's a compelling storyteller at Your Story Media, with a driving passion for social issues like women's empowerment and mental health. I've always wondered on her storytelling style, and she has an immense knack of making aspirational storytelling coming to life. Welcome, Rekha. Pleasure to have you here as well.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I will not come between the great writers. My job here is to ask the right question, and I welcome all the audience who is watching us here. My first question, since it's giving tips and techniques to be a better writer, my first question to all three of you is: what is the why behind your writing? Why do you all write? Rekha, can I start with you first?
For me, blogging started off because I wanted to take a break from everyday life. When you write for a living, you have to some stick to a particular template or stick to a particular format or number of words. And you cannot be as descriptive as you want to, especially when you're in a newsroom and you have to churn out stories by the minute. So that's how I turned to blogging, because I like to be as descriptive as it can get. So that's what describes my blogging style as well.
Okay, so why did you pick up blogging in the first place itself? I mean, why did you want to write?
Why did I want to write? I've always wanted to write, since I was a child. I've never thought of any other career option except to write and to become a journalist. No, absolutely no other career option. And having good English teachers in school helped a lot. Studying in a convent school and your English teachers making you write every day, whether it's a small paragraph, a small passage, of English and English grammar, they made things interesting enough to want to write, looking forward every day to those 10 minutes of wanting to write in class and then reading it out the next day. So that's how the love for writing came up.
Yeah, and the teachers are the first role models of our life. So, and
Absolutely.
If someone is also giving us the direction for a career, nothing like it.
Absolutely.
Next question is to Abhijit. Abhijit, what was your why in writing? I mean, you started off with 2 great books, but you were also, having you were in the help of your corporate career at that point of time. So why did you start writing? and that too with fiction?
So I've been sort of an active letter writer, So I used to write letters to my grandparents, and I think a lot of the writing goes back to that because I was very fond of them, and wherever I traveled and went anywhere, they used to be in Calcutta. I was traveling in different places. I would write to them and tell them about what I saw, and I think that was the bulk of the writing that I did while growing up, and then different I did the usual things that everyone does with the school magazines, college magazines, etc. And I think that was, the trigger. And then I just kept at it.
Okay, so letter writing to actually becoming an author, that's something to think about. What about you, Kiran? I mean, you've been writing and writing and writing. 13 books in the last decade. What makes you write?
Rashmi, I think I was always someone who liked to tell long stories. So my mother has probably some books that she has in her cupboard, which she can probably use for, to blackmail me someday, which has terrible stories about princesses and princes and castles and all that kind of thing from the time I was around 5 or 6. So I've always been writing and telling stories and sort of creating all sorts of yarns and seeing whom I could fool with the most scariest ghost stories. So I think it begins with, as a child, you try to get an audience around you because you have something to say, and that sort of continued with me as I grew older. With journalism per se, I didn't have so much of scope to tell the stories I wanted to tell, but writing my own books now, I think I sort of have got there.
Okay. So from journalism to writing, and I know we're talking about blogging here, and all of you have been blogging since way back in 2005. Now, I remember 2005, there were bloggers, of course, people who were really interested in writing, but people like us, we were just starting off and we didn't even know much about what blog meant. So how did it all start? Rekha, to start with you, you were not in India as well. So how did blogging start with you?
Blogging was not very well known. See, like I just mentioned earlier, it was just to get out from the break of everyday writing to attempt some sort of fiction, and put my observations into words. I used to travel back and forth, so most of the time at the airport, I used to where we had to wait for almost 2 to 3 hours. I used to sit down and I used to really observe people, away from my phone, observe different kinds of people, and living in a as part of a diaspora, you get to meet different kinds of people, different cultures, people from different nationalities. So, getting to know these kind of people, you can't always bring them to your journalism part of life. You'll have to look at something else. So the blog was the best way, to speak about my colleagues, the fun we used to have in office. So it started off like that, and a little bit of traveling and all that. So that's how it started off, not as anything very concrete or focused on me. It just started out as a break from everyday writing. That's how it started.
Yeah, so just to sort of crystallize what you saw in your experiences and observations, you just put it into
Yes.
paper. What about you,
Yes.
Abhijit and Kiran? Both of you, you've been also blogging. I mean, Kiran, you wrote about parenting, and you were writing anecdotes about your child growing up. And Abhijit, you also started writing in 2005. So what was your blogging style, and how did you start off?
So I started writing a blog because I had written the book, my first book, Mediocre but Arrogant. When I had written that, someone told me, you should try blogging as a way of promoting the book. So at that point of time, I didn't know what that meant. I thought what it meant is in parallel, you should also post that on the blog. So I put the entire manuscript on the blog. And then my publisher called me up and he said, "What's wrong with you? What have you done? Take it out right away." And so I did that. Then I asked him, I said, "But someone told me that you should write a blog." So he said, "But that's not what it is." And then I started to write about different things, not just a book, but different things. And then, I started writing about things about the corporate world and, so it just sort of grew from there. But yes, it started primarily first with the idea of promoting the book. But then you kind of think that there is only so much that you can talk about the same book or something. So I started to write about other books. I started to write about all the other things that were happening in my life, short stories, the usual things that everyone does. So it was really that.
Kiran, what about you?
Uh, I was a journalist for the longest time, and then I quit everything, and when I had my son, and there I was sitting down being this milch cow, looking at this little creature next to me and thinking, I'm never going to do anything with my life again. And as a journalist, as a writer, you have itchy fingers. So what do you do with those itchy fingers? And someone told me, there's something called blogging. You might want to try it, and it's good fun. So that's how Karmic started back in 2005. It was just meant to be a chronicle of, bringing up my son. It got immensely popular. It became I'm in retrospect, when you think of it, and kids' privacy and all, the brat was getting recognized everywhere, at airports, at movie theaters. He became so popular, I thought it would go to his head. This was pre-Timur. And then the blog became, I shut it down when he turned 10. They requested me to make it into a publishing house requested me to make it into a book. That's how Karmic Kids, the book, came along. But it was primarily just that, Rashmi, to chronicle his life and the little tidbits from his growing up, and somehow it became into a larger community of blogging moms that I tapped into. We became a sisterhood. It was wonderful, and they encouraged me to start to write my first book, and here I am. So that's basically what it was.
Okay, so blogging then is basically, as all three of you have said, there's a common thread which is coming out, that you're just observing and then you're just putting your thoughts into paper. So what would be the first advice for first time bloggers who've never started writing? Abhijit, can I go to you to ask that first?
So I think when you start blogging, you write about what you can really write about with your own point of view, rather than to actually start writing because somebody. So if somebody writes a great sports blog or a parenting blog like Kiran did, I think I'd be terrible at it. And so you write really about things that you observe and what something that you can write about endlessly. One of the points that I think is that if there is something that you can write about only once, probably it's not great to start a blog. And there are many other platforms today. You can write stories on Twitter. So I think it's really trying to see where do you really find that resonance and what can you write about without feeling tired of it.
Sure. So, Rekha, you've been, you say that, you write on feminism and you write on women empowerment. So, do you think it is necessary to have one particular theme to, sort of go deeper into it? Or do you think as a blogger, you should be writing on 5, 10 themes?
Rashmi, I believe you should write what you're most comfortable with. You know,
Exactly.
what you feel you can express well, in your blog. And blogging is different from other kinds of writing in the sense that it is you are putting forth an opinion and what you feel about something, whether you feel strongly or whether you want to criticize or whether you're for something. So it's an extension of you. I believe a blog is an extension of you and what you feel strongly about. So stick to what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with speaking about feminist issues or anything, write about that. Like Kiran had the most fabulous blog, which I followed for the longest time. She wrote
Oh,
about parenting.
okay.
So, and she did it really well. So, find what you're best at and write about it. And don't, follow the trend. I don't believe in following the trend. Like if writing about something, writing about tech is the trend now. You don't have to follow it if you're not interested in it, just for the sake of following it. So follow what you like and what you can express in simple words is what is my, take on this.
So what I'm hearing is that everybody, you need to be passionate about a particular subject, and that should come from within you, and that will help you to express yourself better. So,
Yes.
Kiran, I mean, you've been writing on feminism, you've been writing on sexuality, you've been writing on parenting, uh, and you've also been writing fiction. So, I mean, how does all of those experiences and everything come together in your writing?
Walt Whitman did say that I contain multitudes. So I think that's true for all of us. We are all composites of various things. We can't really bracket ourselves and say, I'm only this and I'm only that. So I may be a mother, but I'm also a daughter. I may be a woman. I may be a feminist, but I'm also a wife. I had a column called the Married Feminist for the longest time. And I think as Rekha and Abhijit very rightly said, it's the passion. If you're passionate about a particular topic and you have some amount of domain expertise, I mean, I honestly, I mean, what expertise do you bring to parenting except for giving birth? But if you're passionate about something and you want to go deep into that, I think that is what I have always believed. So if I'm talking about parenting, it's because I'm fully invested in my parenting. If I'm talking about my feminism, it's because it's something I believe very strongly in. If I'm talking about anything else, I mean, gender issues, apart from feminism, it's because these are topics that affect me that I am involved with. So I think the basic thing is that you write about what you're passionate. I mean, we are all echoing the same theme, but it is the hard truth that you write about what you're passionate about and don't follow a trend. So if something doesn't interest me, I mean, in fiction, mytho-fiction is something that's really popular, but it's not an area that interests me. So you won't catch me writing about it or writing in that space. So it's just that be true to yourself, your multiple selves also.
So being authentic is what, so be true to yourself and be authentic as much as you can, because then the right words will flow out of your mind and will come into your writing as well. So Abhijit, I mean, I know you do, I mean, in your blog, you have a very interesting USP, which is doodling. So, how did you start? I mean, of course, with blogging, of course, you write, you research also quite a bit, and then you also, your creative style is there. So, how did that come into picture? I mean, did somebody inspire you to do that? How did you start doing that? Because it's your signature style.
So I think one of the ways to think about writing is, you try to make sense of complexity, in multiple ways. I mean, so if, like Kiran so eloquently talks about parenting, so parenting has loads of things that are happening to you, and you kind of take one aspect of it and simplify it and put it together. So for me, a lot of the drawings actually are there because that's how I used to take notes, not necessarily with all those elaborate colors and all that, but I would when I read something, I kind of find it very easy if I draw that out and it stays in my head because there's so much of pages and pages of text I can't recall that. So when I kind of try to make sense of that, I simplify it, and drawing is a simple, great way to simplify it. That so it was really that. And then somebody looked at those and said that, why didn't you add that as an illustration in the blog? I mean, that'd be nice. So I really started doing that. When I was working, in my last job, I used to send out a little email of something that I had read about or something that fascinated me. And when I started to add the visuals, same sketches, I found that the response back to me, from the employees, I mean, that really dramatically increased. So I found that simplifying something actually gets you better readership than to explain to people how a complicated thing it is and how well read you are, so that it sounds really complex. I mean, that's really a bad way of writing. So writing is also about making sense of the world and simplifying it. So drawing is one method, or your writing could be another way of doing it.
Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting point that of course you write for your own passion, but also it needs to make sense to the other person. It needs to be simple enough for the other person to sort of try and connect with your words. So I know most of you all also use a lot of storytelling in your session. In fact, Rekha, in fact, your entire blog is about your story, about sort of amplifying other people's experiences and putting it into a story. So how do you do that? I mean, it's not your story; it's somebody else's story. But whenever I read your blogs and whenever I read the story about somebody else, it is so aspirational. So how do you get yourself into the other person's shoes?
My first point writing is as simple as possible. My first editor told me write aggressive writing to a television audience. This was way back in the 90s. So now we are writing for a mobile audience. So we need to be as simple as possible, and we need to write in a way that is which compels the person to read further. So telling a story is always telling somebody else's story is always better than telling your own story, right? So I try as much as to explain the story in a simple way, and perhaps giving some effect somewhere, uh, so that to make it more interesting. And and the flow, and I try to make the flow, like when you get in from one paragraph to another, to make it simple and easily readable. That's what we have been taught as journalists, and perhaps that's what I've been following as well. And description, yes, when you write, when you write about experience, when you write about your surrounding, write about the outfit or the attire, I think that makes it much more easier for people to to relate to. So that's what I use in my writing, to make it as descriptive as possible.
So we're talking about stories and anecdotes, and we also agree that it's a great hook, and all three of you do that. So how do we collect the stories? Kiran, if I can come to you, because you've been writing, you've written so many books, and every 3-4 months you're coming out with a book. So how do you sort of get so much of stories and anecdotes, or is it
I would really like to know that too. Kiran, tell me about this. How do you manage to do this? Just prolific. I mean, it's so inspirational. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
No, that
either
you're being very
you have a
generous.
diary with you where you're putting in all the anecdotes and saying, okay, I will now put this in some story and I'll put it somewhere. I don't know, where do you get the where do you
Exactly.
when because it comes from your own observation, right? That's what you said. So how do you get those stories? How do you put it together? How do you remember those stories? And that would be great for all of us to know when we're starting to write.
I think as a writer, we are all magpies, so to say. We're all collecting the shiny little baubles from everywhere, and these could be incidents and stories from other people's lives. We're constantly cannibalizing on everyone's lives. No one's safe from us. And they keep saying, don't be nasty to a writer. They might just put you in a book and kill you off. So I think throughout my life, I'm more of an observer. I'm sure all of us are, Rekha, Abhijit included. We are all observers. We are the ones who will sit in a corner at the party and look around and see what's happening. We're not going to be the life and soul of the party. So that's basically it. We're quiet and it all comes out on paper. So we're absorbing. We're sponges. And to write, I think the most important thing is to be somebody who absorbs. So, and somebody who's empathetic. So I'm unnecessarily more empathetic than I need to be, to the extent that my son will tell me in movie theaters, now don't start crying when the national anthem comes on. So, this unnecessary uh, wearing of my heart on my sleeve and being unnecessarily empathetic also serves the purpose in me being able to identify with other people's stories and the tragedies in their lives whenever I hear of them or come across them, and it stays with me. So, for instance, a book like Missing Presumed Dead, which is about a woman who walks away from her home leaving her two kids, actually was something that happened when I was very small, and someone in the neighborhood just went away and nobody tried to find her. I don't know what happened. But her kids used to play with me, and I was so shocked at that time. I was like, how could somebody leave her kids and go? I grew up, we moved away, and like no, more than 40, 45, 46 years later, it's in a book. So, it stays with you. Little things stay with you. And Abhijit, all this thing about being very prolific is just this whole myth. You know how it is. Some books take few months, some books take years. It all just happens that it comes out it seems to be coming out together, but, each book takes its own time. There are books I've worked on which have taken 4 years, 5 years. Some books have taken 2, 3 months. So it's just it's just that.
Thank you.
So, Kiran, you're talking about being a prolific writing, and Abhijit was also saying that. So, and this question is to all the three of you. So, what happens if I have a writer's block? And this is a question also which has come in on the chat box, saying that if we have a writer's block, then how to get over it? So, and Anjana Chandrasekharan has asked this question. How do we deal with it?
My approach is to write some more. I mean, because it's really like if there is a block, you just don't. I mean, I don't disconnect from the writing, but I would write maybe something else. I'd drop that particular piece and write something else. I'll draw something else. I'll read something else, and I sort of come back and write. I think read, write, draw is even though they seem like three different circles, I think they're all sort of they sit one on top of the other. You never sort of segregate. For me, all three of them are linked, and I would potentially sort of say that even this whole thing of talking to people. So that's probably the four blocks, which at a point of time something is on top, but the other three are right there. So I don't think they go away. Also, writer's block is something that means right now writing is probably the second, third, or fourth, but it's only a question of time before it comes right back. So then put something else there. So that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you. Rekha, Kiran, would you want to share something on the writer's block?
I would say don't stress too much about it. Writer's block will ultimately go away. That's what I have experienced. So, don't stress too much about it. Don't think too much about it. Perhaps don't write for some time if you don't feel like it. Go out, probably take a walk, meet some people, talk to people. The more you talk to people, the more you are in touch with, different types of people and different personalities, the more it helps your writing, is what I feel. So probably when you come back and then open your computer or your laptop, you can start writing. Maybe it would not be what you want it to be, then after maybe a few times of attempting to write, you'll just get over the block. You'll start writing again.
Okay,
You know,
Kiran, what about you?
See, I will speak from the perspective of a professional creative writer. So I say if you call yourself a writer, you can't indulge in a writer's block. You can't afford to indulge in it because that's your job. You don't get a surgeon saying, I have surgeon's block today. You don't get anyone else, tech person saying, I have tech block today. They just go out and do their work. So if you have a writer's block and if you're going to use that as something to say, no, I cannot write today, I have a writer's block, you're just running away from your job. Your job is to sit at the desk every day and get the words down. And if it's blocked up and if the words are not flowing to, it is one word after one word after one word and the words will flow. You can edit something that is badly written. You can do nothing with a blank page. So sit down there, write your words. I did a TED talk on this about the muse. So the muse is not really bothered or whether you're inspired or not. The muse will come any odd day, but she needs to see you sitting there at your desk at those particular hours and doing your work. Sit down, do your work, write. If you're really feeling you can't write another word, as Rekha said rightly and Abhijit said rightly, take some time out, do something else, marinate yourself with more information, read Netflix, do something that's creatively fueling to you, but don't do so much of it that you get detached from your work in progress. Don't leave your work in progress. I've seen too many writers saying I have writer's block and then just leaving that work in their computer for days, months. And then when they get back to it, they've lost track completely of, that entire flow. So stay in touch with your work every single day. Do your work. And if you're blocked up and really blocked up, then you need to re-examine whether, it's other aspects of your life that you need to. Because if you are a writer, you will write eventually.
Okay. So words of wisdom from all the writers that don't give up. It'll eventually come. So I like the word of marinating yourself with meeting other people or watching anything or reading a book and coming back and sort of not also giving too much of time, but coming back again. So what happens? And this is an interesting question from Anuranjita actually. So if I write something and I loved it and I put it out there, but people don't like it and there are a lot of trolls. So how do you deal with trolls and how do you deal with some negative feedback about your work? I would want to ask Abhijit. Abhijit, if you can go start with it, and then you can check with others.
I think one of the important things is, as a writer, I think you have to have a thick skin because if you're going to be that fussed about anybody who says, well, I didn't like your article or book or something, and if you crumple, then I don't think you are really going to do a great job. It's really like saying at work. I mean, if you're an employee, somebody's going to come and say that your work is not great. I said, what do? You don't just collapse and because, okay, I'm never going to work again. It's not like that. So you just, it's another piece of feedback. Of course, you would think about it, you would do that. But if you're that sensitive about getting feedback and you're only looking for complimentary things, then I think it's a bigger problem in life that you have that you are only looking for people who are applauding you all the time. I mean, I don't think that's a
And
great way to do anything. You're not just writing. I mean, it's the same thing with cooking. What if you cook something and somebody say, well, the salt is too much? So if you're going to quit cooking, then maybe you don't care about it that much. So otherwise, write in a diary and don't publish it. Because if you put it there for the people don't care whether you've written that for 20 years or 20 minutes. They'll have their opinion, and they're entitled to it. So I don't think you should be worrying about, just saying that everybody must love it because I put in so much effort. When you see a movie, the actor may have spent months and years or doing that role. You see it and say, "Oh, it's a lousy role." That's it. End of your opinion. But the actor has to come back and write or work another day. So I think it's like that. I don't know what the others feel, but this is how I feel.
Rekha, you want to go?
So
Yeah,
yeah, it's talking about confidence.
sure.
Yeah. So Rekha, Kiran, who would want to go next?
Kiran?
Rekha, go ahead. Me? Okay. I quite agree
Yeah.
with what Abhijit had to say because, it's like, I think Amy Poehler said that when you write something, you can't be that kid on top of the water slide, afraid to go down. You have to put your work out there. And with putting your work out there, there is going to be criticism. And if you're going to constantly think that you don't want any criticism, don't be a writer. It's nobody's obligated to love your work. In fact, you owe them their time. They've taken time out to read your work. So if they don't like it, if there is wealth of some thing you can take from their criticism, please take it and see where you could have bettered your work and leave it at that. Move on. Just move on. Don't take it to heart. I mean, some of the criticism I've got for some of my books is like, you think, in 225 pages, that's all you could find, to say about your book. But that's what affected that person. And I'm thankful that that person took out so much time to read my book. So just leave it at that and know that nothing will appeal to every single person in the universe. There will be some who will love it, there will be some who will hate it. As long as you are convinced you did your best and you have done 100% of what you could do, then just go ahead. But if you have that sense of little doubt that maybe this could have been better, then the criticism is going to sting because you have not put your best work out. So make sure that whatever you put out is the best according to you.
So that gets me to the next question. Thank you, Kiran, for this. Rekha, so how do I mean, I've been writing, and for example, there's a question also saying that I've written 20 blogs, but how do I become a confident blogger? When do I say that I'm confident enough and this is my blog and, take it or leave it? So how does that stage happen?
Uh, See, when I started my blog, I'd already been writing for 15 years. So, that confidence of writing was already there. For a blogger who's starting off, I would just say write and write more, and you'll come to a point when you start editing and rewriting your own posts and your own articles, and you'll understand how you can write better. Then when you go through your earlier posts, especially somebody who's starting off, when you go through your earlier posts, you'll once you read it again, it's the same with all of us as journalists. Maybe when we go back to our earlier articles, we feel that in the present context, we would have added something more interesting. The same is with blogging, I believe. Once you write consistently, write continuously and consistently. Don't write a post today and then write one after 1 month or 2 months or 3 months.
Very important.
When you write consistently, constantly, and continuously, then and you'll appeal to your audience more. They will come back and see, oh, what's new? What is she written today? And that will further that interest in your blog, and people will start expecting you to write, on different topics, and they'll understand what you're good at. That's the thing, write consistently, constantly, and continuously.
That's great thing. All the three C's that you're talking about. So is that the so how do I write persuasively? I mean, there's so much of content out there with everyone, being a thought leader in a particular subject. Uh, for everybody having a view and somebody already having said it before. So how then we bring originality to our own content? Of course we have our own views and of course we have our own passion, but how do we not get swayed? Because you might like somebody who has said a quote about a particular incident or a situation, and you have your own views, and maybe somebody else has also expressed it, but you still want to write about it. Then how do you go about it? Anybody? Abhijit?
So I would say that when you're writing, especially on the areas like leadership, interpersonal relationships, etc. I mean, these are things that have been there. You find Aristotle has written about it, and although it's pretty unlikely that you would have thought of something so unique that nobody's ever said anything about it before. That's not going to happen. However, what makes it unique is when you put your own point of view, and when you talk about it from a lived experience. Yes, lots of people would have written about managing people or leading an organization or something. But when you write about what was it like for you when you did that same thing, those moments when you're within yourself, that's what you're writing about. That's extremely unique, and that's so the more of that what is there is likely to be unique. The more of what somebody else has said, and you're trying to sound like whoever you admire, is quite unlikely that that's going to sound authentic. So I think really staying in your own voice is probably the best way to describe what it means. So, as I said, that when you think about managing people, I mean, what will people say which is unique? That you need to be authentic, you need to be sensitive to them, make sure you're doing. All these are things that have been said for like 2,000 years.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to say? But when you bring it in the context of the reader, that I think is really what is unique. Your ability to find commonality of what you've experienced and put it in such a way that everybody else who's reading it also can sort of resonate with that. I think that's the uniqueness. That's how I would say.
So resonance with ideas, connectedness with other people to your point of view, though even the point of view is not very original, then it also ends up becoming your unique style, right? So, Rekha, how do you do that?
Uh, when you write, be true to yourself about what you're writing. You know, like Abhijit said, it should be your perspective, your voice. It's your voice that matters when you speak. And that element of being personal in what you write, which might be trending or which might have been written about or which is going to be written about in the future, but your own experiences with that particular topic or subject, your the anecdotes which you bring into it, your experiences of dealing with the pros and cons of that topic, that will highlight your blog post from the clutter, is what I feel. That
Okay, and that gets me to a different question here. So, we've been we've been quoting and we have been referencing and researching. So, any tips and advice as to how do I, sort of reference the material that I've read and how can I put it back into my own writing? Kiran, if you can say that, I mean, the art of quoting and referencing and researching, supporting your writing.
The art, I think when you do research and you reference, there's a great temptation to put all of it out there. I do read a lot of stuff which is overloaded by, look at how much I have researched. So, that comes out very strongly in whatever's written. I just feel that your research should be like little gems that study your manuscript or your work. They should be there when relevant, they should add value, and they should be, uh, of course, absolutely attributed. I find it absolutely appalling that sometimes people just take information and don't attribute it. So attribute it, use it when essential, don't overdo it, use it to make a point. don't rely on your research or your quotes as a crutch to support your, to bulk up your piece or your story. It should be part of it, but not an immense part of it. That's just what I try to stick to. But since I'm primarily fiction, it doesn't really, there's not too much research. For a fiction writer or for my main thing is that, Rashmi, that you can see the research, and if it intrudes upon your reading, you've done a bad job. The research should be incidental to the reading. If you could read a book or if you read a piece and you say, "Oh wow, this person has done so much research," you've lost. Then the research has taken over your writing. So that's just my take on it.
Abhijit, you do a lot of researching and referencing. In fact, your blogs, in fact, today's blog also that I was reading, and it always sort of gives a different a context to a new thing. I always take your reference about the book that you have read, or and it's a very very varied as well. So how do you do that?
So it depends on what you're writing. I mean, sometimes. Um, so, so when you're writing about a business or when you're writing on data points, so if you want to say something which is factual, for example, in in the digital space or tech space, things change almost every other day. But it's really like taking your temperature and writing it on a particular day. So you kind of say that the market cap of this company was so and so. So then that's something that you must put. So you get an idea of when was this done. It's really so it's that. Having said that, I think when you look at research, you've got to ask yourself when you finish writing it, when you read it and say that what was the point of putting that? Was it to tell people that, look, I've read it all? Or was it with the idea of saying, if you want to read some more, then this is what it is? Or was it done with the idea of saying that this is the information I had as of 15th of last month? It may have changed by then. So there can be these three potential reasons. But I guess in non-fiction, depending on what you're writing, I mean, if you're writing scientific journals, people would need to put in a lot more stuff. When you move to the other end of the scale, when you're looking at fiction, then I think it's a little lesser. Or you're putting an opinion. My opinion can, but sometimes even there you need to sort of substantiate it. So you have to see the relevance of why you're trying to add that little piece. It's a bit like salt. You don't overdo it so that it's a sabzi made of salt. Nobody would like that.
Great, great.
Very
So
relevant.
very relevant answers, all of you. So, and I was just looking at the questions from the audience as well. So there are a couple of questions from the blogging side. They've also moved into writing. So there are a couple of questions here. I don't know the name, but RML22 RML. She's asking or he's asking, could you share more on the insights from your journey going from writing to getting it published? How does one choose a publishing partner? Any insights, please? How does one go about looking for a publisher? How do you sort of, if you want to sort of write a book, how do you go about it?
Oh, it's a very loaded question. Abhijit, would you like to go first?
So, oh gosh, I think my first reaction today is that today the opportunities to publish are so many. I mean, you can actually self-publish, and so many people do that. They have now. I kind of increasingly find the trend that people publish their work on their own, and then once the reader's interest is there, it sort of automatically invites the publishers to come in and seek you out. Um, but then there are equal number of. I mean, I started off by the usual route of sending my manuscript to everyone who was there and getting slapped on the face with everyone rejecting it. So I think there are different journeys. There isn't one way to get married kind of a response. There are many ways in which you can do it. So
So
sometimes
it's not like
some
it's
people.
not like it's not like something like a J.K. Rowling who saying okay, I have this much of money which just comes to me beforehand and I'm told to write. So does that happen?
This is the problem with J.K. Rowling. She's ruined it for every writer possible. And if she's watching it, please tell her that she should feel embarrassed about how much
I
she's
don't
hurt
know her.
the writers.
I don't know her. I would love to know her.
So, no, I don't know what the others feel.
So, Kiran, what do you say? Because you've been writing so many books, so the publishers do they line up to your doorstep and say, "Please, Kiran, write a
Nobody
book right
lines up
now"?
at it.
You can write a
No,
book.
no, 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 no.
No,
Nobody
Kiran,
lines
be
up at your
truthful and
doorstep.
tell us the truth.
So, but seriously though, what they need to do if they're looking for a publisher, if anyone is looking for a publisher, is to see the kind of books that are being published in the space they are writing in the market, what exists right now. Don't reinvent the wheel, I would say. If something is already written in that space, how are you adding to it? If it is non-fiction, if it is creative writing, how is it different from what is already been published? See the publishers who are publishing the kind of stuff that you are writing. For that, you need to go to the bookstore, pick up books, look. You will not find this on Amazon. You will have to physically go and browse the books and see, and then approach the publishers. Most publishers have a submissions guideline on their website. They have certain formats that they invite. Uh, if you don't have an agent, there are agents available. There are literary agents available. Many of them, you can find them all with a very easy Google search and send out query emails to them. If you don't have an agent and you would like to go cold, you know, cold calling, so to speak, to the publishers, see their manuscript submission guidelines and send in your submission and wait. If you don't have the patience for that, self-publish. Self-publishes, as Abhijit said, it's really something that everyone is doing these days. And once, some of our biggest authors today have first self-published, like Ashwin Sanghi, Amish Tripathi, Savi Sharma, the most popular authors today, they have all self-published and then been picked up by very popular publishers. So that is one option. But I would say do the due diligence before you approach a publisher. If you're going to approach a publisher who publishes only literary fiction with a commercial fiction book, you're not going to hear back. So know what kind of stuff the publisher is looking for. Do your manuscript, have your manuscript ready, get it beta read by somebody, get it checked, then send it out, please. Have your grammar in place, have your spellings in space. I get so many unsolicited manuscripts in my inbox. I don't know why, because but grammar and spelling, please, those are basics. Get those in place before you send your manuscript out.
Great, great. So while being in the theme of books and writing, Abhijit, your second book was a sequel to your first book. So how did you think about that? I mean, and I wanted to understand a little more about, do we need to write sequels because your first book was a big hit? How does one go about it?
Well, no. I mean, mediocre but arrogant. Actually, the story finished off. The full story was in my mind. Actually, the story in my mind is a three-part piece. I've just written, the two of them. There's a third one which is still unwritten, which I will. But putting all of it in one book just seemed to make it extremely bulky, and there was a natural break in that process. So I finished the first book there, wrote the sequel, and then hopefully someday I'll get down to completing the third one. Um, so I think it's really around that. But I think you should write not because it is good or bad to write a part two, but it's because you have a story which is still incomplete. Because otherwise, it just one reason why many sequels don't do well is because when people think that the first book is done well, so I think I need to now do something similar, and then it's like cracking the same joke twice. People don't laugh at it. So you have to. It's because the joke has a second part and which is completely different from the first. Then I think it's worth continuing to say that okay, let me tell you what happened after that. So I think it's really that.
Yeah. So no, very interesting point. So getting back to the blogs right now. So Rekha, if you can
Yeah.
come in. So in the age of memes and short forms and online attention span, there's this huge debate and a huge thing of how do I sort of attract my audience to my thing. So what could be some tips and techniques, because you are a great blogger and your story is doing so well. So what would you think would be a couple of those tips and techniques for people to sort of get to your writing, look out for you and say, okay, I want to read what Rekha is writing.
For me, storytelling has always worked. Telling other people's stories in a very engaging and simple manner. It could be anybody's story. The person, a flower seller on the street. You meet her every day, and the kind of conversations you have with her, or somebody who sits on you uh, when you're on a flight, who sits next to you on a flight, or somebody you meet on a train journey. Those, I think any story will work if you write it in a very compelling manner. Add a little bit of drama, add a lot of descriptions. I think a lot of description works. So you be on who you are, as a person when you're telling a story, and I think that works. Even rags to riches stories work. You know, and that's what we have found as while writing, about women entrepreneurs and all that. People are always aspirational at any given point in your life. You're always aspirational. You want to be like somebody, or you want to emulate what somebody is doing. So personal stories always work.
So storytelling, and we've already spoken about it, that storytelling
Yeah.
is one of the biggest hooks any which ways. So so in terms of everybody's writing, and we also talked about our own style of writing, and we also talked about referencing and picking up stuff from others. So in this age where plagiarism is a huge concern among building budding bloggers and writers. So what measures can we take to avoid accidental plagiarism and also protect our own content? And this is a question for all of the panelists. Kiran, you want to go first? I mean, I can see you smiling.
I don't think you can ever protect your content completely in this age of the internet. Someone will take it and rewrite it in a certain way and it's gone. But the thing is, if you have your own original voice and your voice is strong enough, people will know that it's your stuff. As we were chatting the other day, and Abhijit said this as well. So don't plagiarize should be a given. I don't think we need to talk to people that they shouldn't be plagiarizing. I mean, that's a basic ethical standard that one should hold oneself to. Having said that, I'm reminded of an anecdote that happened some many years ago when I was an active blogger. I had written a very emotional, very first person blog post about my husband and some tough times we'd gone through. Somebody had picked it up and reposted it word for word on her blog. Now, this person is not even married. And this is a blog post about her husband. And there were a lot of comments, complimenting her for her strength and this and that. And this all got to me. And I would have been fine. You had no problem. I mean, it's my life, not a problem. But to take the compliments for something that happened to your husband when you're not married was very weird. At the end of the day, अरे यार इतना भी झूठ ना
That's being a
बोलो.
stupid. Stupid.
So if you so once you've written something, it's out in the universe, it's okay. As long as the original is with you and you have the proof that you've written it first. Fine, timestamps also exist in this online space. Unless somebody is taking your story and selling it to Netflix and making a whole lot of money, I think just let it be. Karma will always come back and bite plagiarists on their butt.
So what one thing which is coming out very clearly between all three of you are that you all are very thick-skinned. Nothing affects you. Even if there are trolls, saying, okay, I'm confident about my work. So Abhijit, when you put your entire manuscript out there, when you were, when you first started blogging, what happened? Did somebody pick it up and made a story of your book?
So yeah, I mean, actually, in that little time when it was up, the entire thing, somebody actually took it, changed the setting. In the first book, the setting is in Jamshedpur, changed Jamshedpur to another city in India and published it. And actually, what got caught was, though there were little doodles in the book, the person sort of took those doodles and pasted it as well, Unfortunately, the doodle was fine, so people that traced it right back. So that was the one part of it. But I also think that agree to what Kiran said, that it's very hard for people. So once you put your content there, it's really the kid is out in the open, and they will meet good people, they will meet bad people. But I also think that if you are sort of really prolific in what you do, I mean, there are a number of people who've sung songs that Lata Mangeshkar has sung, but it's at the same time, people immediately say, she sounds like Lata Mangeshkar. I mean, that's the best compliment the person will get. But if you put your own unique stamp, it is so unique, it is very hard to copy, because you're a combination of many different things. If it's one thing, it's easy to copy, but you're a combination of many different things. So I think it is hard to replicate somebody else entirely. I follow so I found that if I just put my stuff out there, I tell people that you like the stuff, take it and use it, because if it helps somebody, it's far better that my work is of value to somebody and they are using it. I'm okay with that. I quite enjoy it, because I'll make 5 more of the same thing. So it's not that, if somebody takes that, I mean, so be it. So I don't have a problem. I actually tell people, the only thing I request is it's in Creative Commons. So if you are taking it, just say that it is from me, rather than passing it off as your own. That's the only thing I request people. But I've come across scenarios when I've gone to an organization, seen a presentation, and seen my own sketch note there. That looks familiar, and the person says, no, there's somebody in my office did it, and then I say, I would love to meet this artist. So I think, yes, you see, come across that. I mean, that's okay.
Yeah. No. So and that shows all your, all of you have such big hearts. I mean, at least something which is very close to my heart. If somebody is picking up, and I would be very, very upset about the entire thing. But I think it also comes from yourself being saying that we are what we are, and we will write, and our work will continue showing, even if somebody takes some part of that work and showcases it as her or her.
But I also think, Rashmi, another small thing that I'd say is, I kind of taught myself how to draw by studying other cartoonists, for example. When I was growing up, I learned by copying R.K. Lakshman's style of doing portraits. Then later on, I got impressed impressed with Mario Miranda's style of illustration. I became a fan of that, and for a long time I practiced doing that, and that actually helps you get over. And then, of course, I became a big fan of Ajit Nainan. And once you do multiple styles, multiple things, you create a style which, beyond a point of time, your drafting becomes reasonable. It is then that you can really start, creating your own format and pattern and all. I started doing sketch notes by looking at somebody called Mike Roddy, who I think is absolutely amazing in sketch notes. So I got fascinated by that. But then, after doing a lot of that, then I kind of, then you begin to get the hang of things, and that's when you can also be original and you create your own pattern and style. And even that evolved. So earlier I used to do just black and whites and little this thing. So today I do a lot of watercolors. I do this. So things will evolve. So one shouldn't get too hung up about if somebody has taken one particular drawing. So be it. I mean, if they liked it, they took it. So that's fine.
Okay, so we're very close to the close time, but there are lots of questions. So, with the permission of the panelists, can I take another 5-7 minutes if it's okay with you all?
Absolutely.
And I can address this question.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Sure.
So, okay, so there is another question coming from RML. Is there a Glassdoor equivalent to check out publishers, folks who can review your manuscript? Kiran said that you can Google and you will find out. So, is there any kind of a organization or website where you can go and check out and give your
I don't think there is any publishers per se. I think you need to do your own work for that. There isn't anything like a Glassdoor for publishers. But I could be mistaken because I live in my cave, so You could ask people who are more clued into it. I mean, I just write my books and send them out to people I know. But I do heartily recommend that you check out beta readers who will go through your manuscript. Everything is available online. They will go through your manuscript. They will tell you. You might have to pay a little amount, whatever it is. But it's worth the investment.
Wow. Okay. So great tip. Thank you, Kiran, for that. So another question, it is again from RML22, where she says, while on plagiarism, is there a risk of your manuscript, which is perhaps love's labor very often, being plagiarized by the very people you have submitted it to? It's a very filmy question,
No one
but
has the time.
it doesn't happen.
No one. No one has the time. No one has the interest. They get thousands of manuscripts. You're lucky if they read it, and you're lucky if they'll respond to it. No one has the time to plagiarize your manuscript. Please don't live in that misapprehension.
Okay, great. So, the next question, I think maybe Rekha, you can come in. If writing on a
Sure.
topic based on research and don't have any such life experience related to it, how can we connect more with the audience?
In context of a blog post,
Yeah, for a blog
if you
post. Yeah.
if you so research based. So research based blog post, you can make it interesting by if you don't have an anecdote to talk about, then you can pick up general stories, what has been in the news or what has been trending, and probably backlink to a particular source. But make it, don't, like Kiran and Abhijit said, they should be incidental and they should not overpower what you're writing or what you're seeking to convey through your post. So use the research, but give your opinion also in it. You know, Probably the research can be used as a sort of a backlink. You can just backlink to that particular source and then write and make sure that your voice comes out. Ultimately, a blog post is about you speaking to your audience while using the advanced hacks that you have at your disposal.
Okay. Okay, so another question also, maybe both Kiran and Rekha can take it. Mahita Kothamasu is asking, being journalist, how do you explain about something happening at present without hurting the targets that you write? So being a little more, yeah.
Hurting the targets that you write. I think if you write anything with empathy, you will not hurt anyone. If you're writing anything with malice, you will hurt someone. So it depends from the point of view of from where you're writing. And as journalists, precisely, to be specific, I've not been a journalist an active journalist for many years, but I think you write with a certain objectivity, and objectivity should not bring malice into the picture. So that's my take on it. So you would not hurt anyone if you're being objective and fair.
Okay,
And I'll be
great.
keen to hear what Rekha has to say.
So like I said, you have to be objective in what you write, and you have to give both sides, right? You have to remain neutral as a journalist. You cannot let your thoughts on that particular subject sway over it. Perhaps you may not agree with what you're writing, right? You may have very strong opinions, but don't, unless it's an op-ed piece, don't let your strong opinions come in the way of what you're writing. Remain neutral, remain objective.
Okay, be authentic, be neutral, be objective. So, the writers have a big responsibility with themselves. So, Abhijit, next question for you. How should one start to pen down the words if they have never been written? If they have never written any write-up and wants to write down their thoughts, as lots of things are on their mind, but we don't get from where to start. So, it's a combination of writer's block plus wanting to write but don't know what way to start.
Yeah, so I think one way to do it is to one of the things to do is that if you can summarize the entire point of view in one line. I mean, if you can sort of say that um, that one line summary at the top, if you sort of can sit down and just say, okay, why am I writing? So what's the point I'm trying to make? If you ask yourself that critical question a couple of times, then I think it's much easier to answer it. Sometimes one of the things that I find useful to do is to phrase a question which I'm answering in the article. So it's a bit like saying that, should So a well-written headline sometimes is that question which has triggered my entire post. So I would, for example, this morning I wrote something about that is a job description redundant because it limits initiative. Because that's the question that comes to my mind when I do that. I'm writing something and that's my argument, and then it sort of flows in that fashion. Um, and then perhaps if I could ask myself, then okay, where have I seen it becoming redundant? Now that's the anecdote that we can put in. So you could start with a question, put the anecdote, put a point of view, and that's a three-stage kind of a format which. I mean, I've never actually thought about it like in that sense of a format. I'm just thinking, how did I do that? I mean, so that's how I would very often do. I draw it out. I mean, that helps because when you are drawing it out, you have no choice but to simplify it. Because when you're putting 3 lines and 3 words and something, you can't really write 400 words there. I mean, you have to do no more than 3, 4 words. Those are ways in which at least I bring clarity to my own thoughts, and you know,
Yeah,
yeah. So
I think great tip, so try to ask a question to yourself and, maybe whatever you want to write, put it in a question format and then maybe try and get the answers. And that is how you will start writing. That's a great tip. That's a wonderful tip. And of course, people, not everybody is great in creative, doodling or, sketching, etc. So I think questioning yourself, coaching yourself and asking those questions, I think is a good way to start. I think it's a great tip. Okay, so Mani Janki Raman has said that I heard some Financial Times journalists mentioning that we need to keep something sweet in every sentence that makes readers continue to read what you write. Is that what you all do?
No,
I would not read that journalist. Yeah.
no,
No.
no, definitely not. It depends completely on the topic. If you're writing a very emotional piece, a very feel-good piece, then you will have something sweet in every line. If you're writing a hard-hitting piece, you will not have something sweet in every line. So it completely depends on what you're writing.
Yeah, it's like saying that when you make a movie, make
And
sure that it's a love story.
Okay. Okay. So, no, so we just, we just, I think I'll just take another 2 more minutes. Just wanted to just, ask you all top 3 tips to become a good writer. And we can go, whoever wants to start first.
Um, I would say be simple in your writing, be descriptive, and write consistently.
Simple, descriptive, and consistently. I think that's coming across very, very strongly with you. Be consistent. Thank you, Rekha.
Hmm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kiran,
Uh, top tricks for being a writer. Uh, ha, read. I don't see people reading enough. Please read a lot. Read a million times more than you write. Write every single day of your life if you want to be a writer. There are no excuses for that. If your day is packed, if you're tired, if you're dead, whatever, write. And know that 99% of writing is rewriting. Your first draft will be shit. Please believe in the necessity of rewriting every single thing you write. I think any of my manuscripts goes through at least 15 to 20 redrafts before I even dare send it to my editor. So please rewrite, please work on your writing, and please read.
great. So read is what you say. Abhijit, your top 3 tips.
No, I don't know if I have a top three. Well, I think if you, it's a bit like for anything. If you want to be a cricketer, what would you do? I mean, it's no different. So you can't say that I'm going to, bowl once today and then I'm going to bowl next year. As you are not going to be a cricketer. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So you write every day. It's a myth to think that creativity is some great event that happens in your life, and when you write a book, and anyone can be creative on one single day, but if you want to be a writer, you have to be creative every single day. You have to be able to write on tap. So I think it's a less glamorous aspect of it. One of the big myths is writing is a lot about creativity. That might be a very small portion of it. A lot of it is pure brutal hard work of writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting. So that's the mechanics of it. But where do you get your inspiration from? I would say two things. One is you read 10x more of what you write, because if that ratio is not maintained, chances are that you're writing garbage. Um, Three, I think meet a lot more people, because the more varied experiences you see on the same thing, you pick up a different point of view, which is interesting. Because otherwise, you are going to narrate your same stories. I mean, one thing that happens with people is, if you are a person who narrates the same stories, no matter what the trigger, if somebody says, the time when I got lost, so you have only one story, then I think you are going stale very quickly. You should have a million different examples of that. And it doesn't have to come from you. It can come from all those conversations you have. So I think that's how I would look at it.
So great tips, great advice. So what I am taking is, like, you need to be authentic, you need to be a great observer, and you need to just have passion to sort of just write whatever comes to your mind and be consistent in writing. I think great pieces of advice from all of you, and thank you for sharing a great part of your life with us, and also all the tips and techniques to make us bloggers and writers. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to all three of you. And thank you, WIT, for organizing the session. It was lovely speaking to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Rashmi,
much.
for moderating it so wonderfully. You did a wonderful job moderating it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great to
guys.
be
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
See you,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.